You just bought your Gaggia Classic, new or second-hand, and want to make great espressos. What would be my first upgrades? Today, I'll cover the easiest and cheapest upgrades that will improve the quality in your cup or that will be important for the long-term maintenance of your machine or for your health and safety, or even those that will make your life easier when preparing your coffee. If you have a Gaggia Classic manufactured in 2019 or before, I would check if you still have the dispersion plate made in aluminum, because it can get really bad. As you can see, mine was horrible. It was releasing some black flakes. I don't know what it is, if it is corroded aluminum, but it's not something that I wanted to drink. And I decided to replace mine by a stainless steel one. It's very simple to check. With a screwdriver, you remove the shower screen. Then you will need an Allen key to remove the two bolts that hold the dispersion plate in place. And it may be stuck, and then you may need to force with a screwdriver as a lever. Just be careful not to scratch your machine. And then you will be able to see the state of your dispersion plate. If you don't know what is the material, it's pretty easy. The aluminum is very light. It's about 65 grams. And if it is brass or stainless steel, it's going to be 3.5 times heavier than the aluminum version, so above 200 grams. If you decide to replace, you will see that there are different versions made in aluminum, brass, with 4 holes, 6 holes, large or smaller diameters. Some will not fit the models made before 2019. Some will fit all the models. In terms of performance, it wasn't clear if one or the other was better. Then I decided to replace mine by the stainless steel version in the original design made by Gaggia, and it's the same that is equipping all the machines after 2020. If you had to change your dispersion plate, chances are that you have the old standard version of the shower screen, and then I would recommend you to change. If you have a new machine with the new standard shower screens, you will see a lot of people recommending replacing by the IMS competition or even the nano-coated version, but I didn't see a big difference comparing the standard one that comes in my E24 and the IMS competition. It's not the nano-coated version, but it looks even worse than the standard that comes in my E24. So if you're just starting in the hobby, I think you have other priorities to invest your money now, and if you decide to upgrade later, okay, but except if you have the old one in pretty bad shape, I think you can keep this shower screen for now. And if you're removing the shower screen and the dispersion plate, I would also use a nylon brush to clean a bit the group head. There's always some oils that gets into the group. I would remove the gasket, would replace in reality the gasket by a new one made of silicone, 8.5 millimeters thickness. This is the standard for Gaggia, and it's pretty cheap. It's something that you can buy for €2 on AliExpress, or maybe 5 if you buy from the most renowned retailers in Europe or the US. And it's something that wears, and you will have to change every 1 or 2 years, because if it gets too dry, it will not seal anymore, the portafilter, and you will see some drops of water leaking into your cup. And if it's coming from the outside of the portafilter, it's probably the group gasket that you need to replace. And if you have the rubber version, it can be really stuck in the group, and it may be difficult to remove. In my case, I had to use a screw and a screwdriver. So I fixed the screw into the rubber, and with that I was able to pull with a plier. And under the gasket there was a lot of residues of coffee. Another part that nobody talks about are the bolts. In old machines, you will see that they are made of brass, or I think they are galvanized, and they tend to get rust. If they get rust, they may get stuck, and you may not be able to remove those screws anymore, which can be a problem. In my Ranchillo Silva, for example, I had to remove the bolts that fix the boiler to the group. They were completely stuck. I broke 3 of them, and it was impossible to remove these screws. I couldn't drill the screws. You need a vertical drill with a long bit to drill inside that screw. you don't have position to drill with a regular bit. I had to pay 70 euros to remove those 3 screws and retap the holes. In my Gaggia 2006, I wasn't able to remove the steam valve assembly. It is stuck. I didn't want to force because I could break the bolts, maybe. I was traumatized with my Rentillo Silvia. It wasn't a big issue. I was able to descale with the steam valve in place, and it wasn't clogged. It was working perfectly well. I just wanted to remove, to clean, and to change the gaskets. But since it wasn't leaking, I decided to leave as is and not force. But then, if you had to replace the dispersion plate, probably you have the old version of bolts that are not stainless steel, and they are probably in bad condition if they were not removed and cleaned regularly. In this image you can see how was the bolt that I removed from my dispersion plate. It was in pretty bad condition. It was rust, and again, I don't want rust in my cup, so I'm replacing by stainless steel. When I opened the boiler, a few of them were difficult to remove, others not really, but anyway, I'm also replacing them by stainless steel, and the first opportunity that I had to remove the boiler again. If your machine is pre-2014, I think, you will still have the old version of OPV and solenoid valve, and you have other bolts that will fix those parts to the boiler. And I would also recommend to replace them. Of course, you will do that based on convenience, right? You will not disassemble your machine only to replace the bolts. But in case you remove the boiler, consider replacing also the screws. And for every bolt that you remove, check the state, check if it's stainless steel or not, and if not, replace by these better materials. There's only one comment that I wanted to make. There are divergent information about the size of the screws. I saw in the most renowned stores different specs. So I leave in the description the specs that I found for each of the bolts, both versions that I found in different stores, and then you can buy a bunch. They're cheap. I think you can buy in any good hardware store close to your place, or maybe if you prefer, you can remove the bolt measure with a caliper, and then you go to the store and buy the exact quantity and size for your machine. If your machine was manufactured in 2019 or later in Europe, it will have the eco-saving mode. It's mandatory by law. And in this case, it will power off your machine after circa 15 minutes. And ideally, you should wait at least 10 minutes to extract your coffee so that it can reach a temperature that is high enough and stable enough to avoid sourness in your cup. But if you're surfing the temperature, you may have to wait up to 4 minutes until you reach your desired condition, which will leave you only 1 minute to start your extraction. You can power off and on again to reset the timer, and then you will have 15 extra minutes. But in my case, for example, I'm always brewing in the 10 to 30 minutes range. I'm always multitasking. Sometimes I'm working from home, and while I'm in a meeting, I leave my machine preheating. Or sometimes the little one needs some attention, or my wife. And guess who has the priority? Kid, wife, coffee. The order is not a coincidence. Then the first thing that I did after buying my E24, even before brewing the first shot, was doing the power switch mode. If you need me to make a video about the power switch mod, leave a comment, but I think this is a simple one, and you can follow the instructions in the Arduino webpage. There's also a video there showing how to do it. And if you did the power mod, now you can use the smart plugs, you can connect to your Alexa. Maybe not for those who cannot miss a second in the morning, but in my case, it's pretty okay if I let machine preheating for 10 minutes and generally take more than that, much more than that, to have my breakfast, for example. But in my ECM, for example, it takes about 25 to 30 minutes to preheat well. And there are some workarounds. I can use the steam button, for example, to accelerate, but it's a bit convoluted in the early morning. So in this case, I use a smart plug. I program the day before to preheat 30 minutes before I want to have my espresso. But in a Gaggia Classic, 10 minutes is okay. I don't think it's mandatory, but it's convenient. I'll leave some links in the description in case you're not familiar with those plugs. And by the way, I'm also leaving links and specs for everything that I'm mentioning here, every part, every upgrade, every mod. I'll leave a list of the main items that you need and the specs. Now let's talk a little bit about pressure. I think 15 bar is too much. This is consensus. This is for pressurized baskets, and people in the hobby are using non-pressurized baskets, and for that we prefer 9 bar or less. If you're using a bottomless portafilter, you will be able to see the quality of your extraction, and you can also observe how messy the 15 bar can be. In these images you can see a comparison between the two extractions at 6.5 bar and 15 bar. To be more precise, 13.5. This is what I measured. And everything is exactly the same. Same coffee, same grind setting, same machine, same workflow. The only difference is the pressure. Then, if you want to use lower pressure, you have basically two options. One is adding a dimmer and a pressure gauge to your machine, and the other is changing the spring in your OPV. Both have pros and cons. Well, if you have the old version of Gaggias, the ones pre-2014, you will have the adjustable OPV, and then with a wrench you can loosen or tighten the OPV to increase or reduce the pressure. These options have pros and cons, of course. The dimmer and pressure gauge mods will allow you to control very precisely the pressure, and you will be able to play with flow profile and pressure profile. You can check in my playlist with the 3 basic mods how you can install those 2 components, how comfortable you are with these modifications, but the downside is that it's a bit more complicated. Changing the spring in a Gaggia Classic Pro, the model that was launched in 2019, and all the subsequent models is relatively easy. You just need to be careful, because if you tighten too much, you may break the OPV. It is made of plastic, and if too loose, it may leak. So be careful when you are replacing the spring, okay? The disadvantage is that you cannot play with flow profile and pressure profile, and you cannot pre-infuse. Well, you can start and stop your shot, but the problem is that with the solenoid valve, when you start, stop, and start again, you are releasing pressure from your group, and this may break your puck and lead to channeling. So ideally, you should pre-infuse without releasing the pressure in the group. But this is not possible in an original Gaggia Classic, only if you add the dimmer or the Gaggino. Just a few comments if you're changing the springs. One, if you're going to do the Gaggino modification later, keep the original spring, because you may need later. You need at least 10.5 bar to be able to modify your machine and install the Gaggino. Second, if you want to change the springs, there are cheap options on AliExpress. I made a calculation, and if I was importing those springs from Blue Star Coffee to Brazil, I would pay 7 times more. Or if I was buying from a famous store here in the Netherlands, I would pay 5 times more. But then you may ask, do they work? Well, I tested 3 of them, one in 9 bar, one in 8 bar, and the other in 6.5 bar. And here you can see the results. You may also buy a kit that comes with the springs and the low profile drip tray, which is, by the way, my next suggestion. So one thing that annoys me a lot is that I cannot use the double spout portafilter with a scale and put my cup under the double spout. Sometimes the spout will touch the coffee that I'm extracting. Then we have 2 options. One is using those platforms for scales. I designed a model, and if you have access to a 3D printer, I'll leave the link for the models. It's free and public available. The height is adjustable, so it will fit probably any scale that you may have. You just move up and down, and you can tighten this screw to fix the height. If you see against the light, you can see that the printing is not perfect. I was using the multicolor function in my 3D printer, but you can print with this face down. You print the letters separate and you glue with the super glue. It's going to be perfect. And the second option is the low drip tray mod. In this case, there's also a 3D printed version. I printed mine. They are okay. However, it will reduce the volume available in your drip tray. I'm considering making a new version with a larger volume, but I don't know. If I develop something, I'll let you know. But if you don't have access to a 3D printer, those kits on Amazon seems to be very competitive in terms of price. If you order from a 3D printing services provider, it would probably cost more than those kits available on Amazon. But if you 3D print, remember that the pressure release tube will be a bit short for this low profile drip tray. Then you can buy on AliExpress only the tube and the tube cutter and have it in the right size for your machine. It is aesthetically better. I think I'm gonna buy for mine and also change the design for the drip tray to have more volume. Finally, if you didn't see my previous video, this Gaggia E24 is pretty competent in managing the temperature. But it may be convenient to add a thermometer or a PID. The PID may be a bit complicated for some people to install, but the thermometer, I think it's relatively easy. You just need to put a thermocouple type K, the hole washer type, under the steam thermostat, connect to the thermometer, and this thermometer will need a power supply, in general 12 volts. It's relatively easy to make this mod, and it will give you more tools to surf the temperature in your machine. The PID is a bit more complicated, it's more expensive, but it's very convenient. You don't have to wait, for example, for the temperature to go up and down and then extract at your desired range. But it's up to you. If you don't want to install any of them, just check my previous video where I measured the temperatures when the light goes on, off, the peak temperature, and with those data you can surf the temperature in your machine, considering those temperatures that I mentioned and the time between lights on, off, and the peak. Those measurements are specific for E24 that has a brass boiler, larger volume, but I also did the same for the Gaggia Classic 2006 that has an aluminum boiler, and it should be the same performance for all Gaggia Classics before the E24, except for the one that was produced between 2015 and 18 that had a stainless steel boiler, doesn't have a solenoid valve, the one that nobody wants, nobody likes. But if it's aluminum boiler, you can check the video that I made about temperature surfing in my Gaggia Classic. If it's the brass boiler, you can check this last video that I made about the E24. By the way, in my PID video installation, there was a comment requesting me to prepare a video that is more straightforward. No explanations, just like a cake recipe on how to install the PID. If you want me to make a video like this, put in the comments down below, just for me to know if it's a one-off or if a lot of people still have doubts about the PID installation, and then I can make a more simple one. And if this video was helpful, don't forget to give your like and subscribe for more useful tips. Thanks for watching.